It's story time. Hello, everyone, and welcome, Dream Team, to Dreams Story Time. So, today I am going to be discussing postpartum with you and my pregnancy journey, giving birth to my wonderful, wonderful 4 month old Kari, and the transition from being postpartum with Sahir to being pregnant, not even 2 years after giving birth. I found out I was pregnant about 3 months before my second born was set to turn two. So, Sahir, my second born, had a bit of a hard time transitioning because when I found out I was pregnant, I felt like I needed to stop breastfeeding. Breastfeeding was getting to be a bit hard in those first few weeks of pregnancy because um, the cramping. I still had those breastfeeding contractions and stuff that I would get, especially when he would have those rough days where he would just want to eat pretty much all day long. Cluster feeding. So I had a hard time with that, with the cramping and stuff and being fearful. I had a miscarriage with my first pregnancy at 13 weeks. So to be having those types of cramps so early on in my pregnancy, it made me scared that if I continued breastfeeding, I would end up losing the baby. I know some people do breastfeed, alongside being pregnant, and I did read up on some of those situations. However, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it should feel like or any of that. I didn't know if those women still experience the cramps or anything. So, because I was having the cramps and I couldn't find any proof to say that the cramps weren't going to be a risk to the baby, and my care team wasn't really answering those questions, I pretty much just made the decision to stop breastfeeding. Now, with this came a heightened sense of postpartum depression because I felt like the one thing that I was giving my baby and the one way we were able to bond with each other, I could no longer do, even though he wasn't ready to make that separation yet. It was hard because I always wanted to do baby led weaning where he would, wean off of the breast himself. However, because I had to basically force him off, he couldn't do that. And it was a lot on me emotionally. Um, so as time went on and things got better, my pregnancy was progressing very well, given I had very bad morning sickness. While I would go as far as to say I had HG, my care team was not diligent enough to really take my concerns into consideration enough for them to diagnose me. However, I had lost 20 to 25 pounds within the first 20 weeks of my pregnancy. I didn't start gaining the weight back until about, want to say, close to 26 weeks. Um, Around that point is when the morning sickness and nausea started to get better. I literally could not eat, y'all. I could not eat. I was struggling to keep down drinks. I was running to the bathroom with being sick at least 5 times a day. Um, and sick to the point where I'm literally letting up everything that I could have possibly eaten that day within minutes of eating. I would basically force myself to eat and just try to get something on me, and it was not working out the way that one would hope. So I ended up just taking other means, because my care team was not taking my concern seriously. They honestly just acted like everything I was going through was just a normal part of pregnancy, even though I was expressing to them this was my third child. And even though they did not oversee my care for my last two children, that I was very familiar with my body and when something was not right. And instead of them listening to me, they kind of just, oh, it's just a normal part of pregnancy. Your ultrasounds are fine. So that's just what it is. Right. Now, mind you, I only had two ultrasounds during my pregnancy with Sakari. My first pregnancy, I had preeclampsia, and he was a 9 pound, 12 ounce baby. And I ended up going through 3 days of active labor before finally having a C section. My second born was my easiest pregnancy and my easiest birth. He came out to 8 pounds, 1 ounce, and he was born within 11 hours after being induced. So, to go from 3 days to 11 hours to dealing with what I dealt with sorry, yeah, your girl was going through it. So, um, I had told them like my concerns. I had told them like something just didn't seem right. I didn't feel like I was getting enough nutrients. I didn't feel like things were going the way that they really need to. And I asked my care provider about my ultrasounds. I asked them if I should be concerned that I hadn't had any ultrasounds aside from my anatomy scan. And they told me, oh no, everything was fine at your anatomy scan and we don't see any concerns with that. So I was like, okay, that's fine, whatever. Maybe it's different because this is considered a low risk pregnancy compared to the other ones. Because I had already had a successful VBAC. However, um, I did express to them that I didn't feel like I was being taken seriously. I expressed to them that I felt like I needed to have more ultrasounds because of my situation with my other two, and the fact that I had some pretty large babies. They couldn't even tell me how big he was at the anatomy scan. They didn't really pay me too much concern. The midwife that I was seeing at the hospital, she was very nonchalant. She just kind of, hey, do you have any questions? And when I expressed the questions that I did have, it was just, oh, okay, that's normal. And then she would go about her business, listen to the baby, and then I wouldn't see her again. Um, this was hard for me because I came from a care team in another state where they actually cared. They actually cared. They actually took the time and consideration. Now, I will say with my second born, it was a little different because I had a black doctor. My care team was a lot more attentive, especially with it being my first VBAC, and my doctor being cautious because of the history of a preeclampsia with my firstborn. So it was surprising to see that my new care team just wasn't as attentive. So y'all, I left North Carolina to go all the way back home to Delaware just so I could give birth to my baby because they had me nervous to give birth in a hospital because they wasn't listening to me. And no woman should go through that. No woman, I don't care what color you are, should ever go through feeling like you have to relocate to save yourself.
On another note, y'all look at this face. I think I did pretty good for me not having done my makeup in a while. What y'all think? Y'all think it look nice?